Conservative conversations, commentary and content. And now you can access these important discussions in the format that you prefer. Watch, read, listen. You can watch our content on our website, familyfirst.nz. Simply click on the Watch tab and you'll see all our various programs that you can view. You can also watch these across our social media channels: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, TikTok, Threads and BlueSky. Everywhere. If you'd prefer to listen while you go about your daily activities or are travelling in a vehicle, then click on the Listen tab and the latest content is there for you to listen to. You can also find us on Spotify under Family First NZ. And if you prefer to read our commentary, then click on the Read tab. We're increasing the frequency of our written commentary, focusing on the latest research and analysing the current news events which are relevant to families and society. We provide the insight and context which you won't get from the mainstream media. We're also now adding the full scripts of Family Matters and McBlog under the video link in our website, and also written summaries on our live stream shows so that you can read and digest the material at your own pace. Consume our conservative conversations in the way that best suits you. Watch, read, listen. Go to familyfirst.nz and join the conversation.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry, still trying to unmute myself. So good morning. Welcome to Solid Ground, where me, Simon O'Connor, the host, is thinking he really needs to change the button that sits below this camera to allow me to unmute. It's got so sticky now. I'm like, whack, whack, whack. Good morning to Solid Ground. Well, maybe it's a wet morning. I'm seeing the comments coming through, and I certainly know what it's like here. But first and foremost, welcome to Solid Ground. It's where I discuss the issues of the day over often the last 48 hours between the Tuesday show. Talk about the issues of the day here in New Zealand and around the world. But importantly, as regulars know, this is a live show. So if you're on Family First's Facebook page or its YouTube channel, your comments are coming live to me here in the studio. So, well, say hello, tell me where you are, what the weather's like, but importantly as well, let me know what you think about the topics we're discussing, or if there's something on your mind, if there's a question about something happening in New Zealand, or as I say, around the world, put it into the chat, and I will do my best to answer it. In fact, in some ways, throwing a question to you guys, particularly here in New Zealand, I mean, what, this week is the biggest issue for you? Is it around fuel? Is it concern around what's happening globally? Are you worried about the education changes? I don't know. But let me know. And just to, well, I can prove it's live at one level, but just to show you, and often number one who gets there first is Harrison, so good morning. I always love to say hello to those who are popping in. We've got Mike as well. I'm not going to get to everyone this morning, but Lynette, good morning. I can see, as Rosie is doing, it is wet pretty much all across the country. We've got Edmund there in Papamoa, lovely Papamoa. Know it well, relatively well. We often travel Edmund down to the Tauranga and the Mount, so yeah. Gosh, wet there as well. And who else have we got? Oh, we've got David, good morning. We've got people everywhere. Nigel, good morning, good morning. Well, look, guys, it does... Oh, I've got Bernice. It's not just raining. It's raining cats and dogs. Although I suspect, too, Bernice, there'll be a little bit of... what's the right word? not hesitation, probably a little bit of concern. I'm happy to be corrected after obviously what happened at the Mount earlier in the year. And Peter's asking, I should front this question. So as you know, Brooke Van Velden, who was the ACT MP here in the seat of Tamaki, so she beat me in the last election. In the election she beat me, not beat me overall. Shouldn't make jokes about those things, but no, she's decided she's had enough actually after about 5 years in politics. So this was her first term as an electorate MP, but she's pulling up sticks and leaving Parliament, so she'll have finished 2 terms. So that was quite a shock. But Peter's asking, am I going to go back? And the short answer is no. A lot of people have been asking, which is actually very flattering. But I'm staying out of Parliament, working and doing my advocacy and influence to the extent I can through the likes actually of Family First and elsewhere. And speaking a little bit personally, for me and Rachel, it's been a wonderful new season. I've always find that a slightly strange phrase, but it's one we use quite often. So put it this way, no, I'm not going back into Parliament, regardless of which party comes in and asks me and how many wonderful people encourage me. I enjoyed thoroughly my 12 years in politics and what I was able to do there, particularly actually working and helping the locals here in Tamaki. But I'm in a new stage of life now and loving being out. So loved being in, loving being out. And it's giving Rachel and I a whole lot of new opportunities, including around travel. But I don't want to, what's the right word? I'm sort of losing my English today. Been actually a very, very busy week. I thoroughly enjoy actually the work I do with Family First. It gives me a lot of actual pleasure. So enjoy being here. Anyway, very long answer, Peter. So yeah, not going back. So sorry to disappoint some people. A whole lot of others will be celebrating. I quickly will add on the political front. Well, I'm not going back. I see my role and ours, if I might, encourage those good MPs who are in there across the Parliament. And encourage other good people to stand. I think that's really important. And obviously we shared on Tuesday the really good news that Alfred Naro is returning to the Parliament. And, you know, I think my impression when Alfred effectively was pushed out by the National Party, he still has things he wants to do and he was very keen to get back in. I was different. On election night, literally about, 15 minutes, I'm not exaggerating, 15, 20 minutes after the result, I remember addressing my supporters, and for me it was like a switch, like, we're done, and moving on, and I have to say it has been incredibly exciting since then. Very quickly, Morena, to destiny there, ki te pēhea koe, one might say. I would say, from my side, ki te neneo, which to those who don't speak te reo means I'm feeling quite tired, which is probably coming across on the show this morning because I don't feel as on top of things. Yeah. Anyway, I'm looking at the comments. Hey, Glenn, good. We have an Australian. Good morning. If you're in Australia, particularly if you're on the East Coast, it's early. If you're on the West Coast, my lord, it's even earlier. Actually, Rachel and I are heading over to Perth soon for a conference. This is actually one of the things which has changed, if you will, post-politics. Lots more travel and opportunities. So, yeah, anyway, I'm all over the place as typical me. Look, I wanted to share with you what I think is, for me, one of the most exciting podcasts this year. If you don't know the name Erica Komisar, particularly if you're a parent, and even more particularly if you're a young parent, you need to. I've met Erica a few times, and most recently in Australia at a conference. She is incredible. She is a clinical social worker, psychoanalyst. She's a mother, an author, and her big focus, if you will, is to say, look, it really is the priority of parents to raise their children. She acknowledges it's really hard out there. Obviously, a lot of parents need 2 jobs. She doesn't take away from any of that. But she says, look, spend as much time with your child as you can in those first 3 years. That attachment is just so vitally important. And so sending them off to strangers in daycare, even if you know that people, she says, there's so much change that actually the child, this is her argument, the child is in a constant state of fear and uncertainty. And it leads to problems, obviously, for the child then, but right through life, a lack of mental resilience, worry, concerns, anxiety, and so on. So she urges people to spend as much time as you can with the child. And importantly too, she says it's not about having to be playing with the child 24/7. Just being in the home, the kid knowing you're there just makes such a huge difference. She's amazing. As I say, met her in Australia for a big conference a few weeks ago. She was at something called the ARC Forum. Bob and I attended last year. She is incredibly sought after. Radio, television. As I said, she's written multiple books. A real coup, if I could put it that way, that I got her. And here's one little snippet. I need to do some more, which just sort of sums up where she's coming from.
Governments don't care about children. You have to care about your children because they don't give a damn about your children. They care about the GDP. They care about you putting more money into the system. But don't be fooled to believe that they give a damn about your children because they don't. Governments are in it for as many workers as they can get into the system. They do not care about your children. So if you're going to rely on the government to care about your children, then that is also a fantasy. You have to care about your children. You have to do what's right by your children, in spite of the fact that the government doesn't care about your children.
There you go. I think she's right on the money. For what it's worth, in my view, is that a lot of, again, let's not get too extreme here. We need childcare. I know a lot of people need to hold down 2 jobs and so forth, so we need it. But when you think about what governments are doing, including this one, is pumping more and more money into early childhood education, tax incentives and the like, in order to draw parents back to work. And I think Erica is correct. The government isn't actually worried about you or your children. It's worried about the economy and the GDP. So I think she nails it, and I just want to encourage you, particularly if you're a parent or a grandparent, listen to this podcast. If you haven't heard of Erica, that is fine, but she's a big name. She's a really significant person. And I just thoroughly loved interviewing her, which was great. To FL907, good morning. Lovely to have you along. And I'm seeing Peter's telling me about homeschooling. I think that's a smart way to go. I have to say, if Rachel and I were doing kids again, we would homeschool them. I think it would make a big difference. And obviously we got political playback tonight. Quick shout out to Bob and I. We'll be back here at 5 o'clock talking. That's pretty much what we'll be doing, talking the politics of the day. So join us then. Look, in breaking news, have I got the right button? Yes, well, sort of. It is about Meta and Facebook. This is the breaking news, which I've now missed. Where's it gone? Must be this one up here. Here we go. I'm just losing the plot today, aren't I? A US jury has actually just found Meta and YouTube liable for a young woman's social media addiction. This is actually quite big news. So you'll know we at Family First have been talking a lot recently around holding big tech to account because we think they're actually having far too much influence on young people. And in Australia they've got the under 16 social media ban. And as you've been following what myself and Bob are talking about, we're very keen to see them actually put like an app store bill in. In other words, when you're trying to download an app on your phone, you can actually decide whether your child gets to download something like Meta or YouTube and so on, because they're harmful. And actually, as I say, literally breaking news, Bob's just tweeted about it in the last half an hour or so. Meta and YouTube have been found liable for this woman's social media addiction. So this will have repercussions, just as actually the person who took the trans activist to court in New York will have repercussions. Once there's a legal precedent, things do begin to change. Not necessarily fast, not necessarily overnight, but it sends a major signal. I don't know which level of court this is in the United States, so they'll undoubtedly, if they can, have an appeal. But I think this is significant news. Big tech is finally being held to account. It's important to say, at least from my side, not all technology in any way is bad. I mean, that's, I'm using it right now. But big tech, the Facebooks, the Metas, look, the Googles, you name it, they hold enormous power and influence, particularly over young people. They keep feeding content, the way the algorithms are set up, the way the colors are designed. So this is very, very significant. And I see some comments coming through asking, well, what about personal responsibility? And I'm all for that. I think as you get younger, though, it's harder to be, if you will, a fully consenting. Well, you can't be an adult if you're a child, ipso facto. I think children is a slightly different case, which is why we're a big fan of the App Store idea here in New Zealand. So instead of banning young people from social media, if you age verify or age estimate people who are using the App Store, and yep, that will affect all of us. A little bit of data will have to go to Google or to Apple to say that Simon is over 16. But the second part of an App Store bill, as we call it, an App Store accountability bill, is that the child's account gets linked to the parent's account. And so you, the parent, we, the parents, can consent. If we go, hey, look, I actually don't mind my child being on YouTube at age 14, then the parent can consent to that. And I think that's quite important. And I just see a comment here from, I think it's Dale, and apologies if I got that wrong. The regulars know, and I really need to show you guys a photo sometime. I have one little laptop screen with all the material that I'm using for the shows, and it's so small. But if I've read it right, Dale says, I've heard that in Hungary the government pays parents for childcare. They do. There's actually, I think it's tax incentives up to like the fourth child. It's quite generous. And jumping back to the Erica Komisar interview, we talk about this very briefly, but that's where actually governments need to put their emphasis. They need to be focused on giving more money and support to the parents, whereas what's happening at the moment, certainly in New Zealand, the government is putting more and more of your tax money into childcare in order to get the parents back into work. That's her fundamental point. And I think we all know it intuitively. And good morning too to Jackie, I see coming through, which is fantastic. Lovely to have you here. And Sam, I see he's commenting about Amana Christian School, is doing some, he's saying there's some great books that they produce. So that's Amana Christian School. Brilliant to hear. And Dennis, look, lovely to have you back. I'll just go broad, but look, still continuing to think of you and the family at the moment. But lovely to have you back, and I need to jump back onto that group as well and make some comments. I'll try to do that later today, although I'm on the road. As I say, so that's significant news about Meta. And I thought, interesting, speaking of that, you'll remember I talked on Tuesday about I thought was the ridiculous decision of the courts of New Zealand pulling out of X and instead choosing to go to BlueSky. If you've even heard of BlueSky, it's an alternative to X, a woefully small alternative to X, which is basically filled, and I'm going to be a little bit derogatory, but crying lefties. To sort of save myself from that comment, but we at Family First are there, not because we're whining lefties, but actually we like to wind the lefties up by posting. But by and large, BlueSky is, well, it was touted as the alternative after Elon Musk bought X, and there was big hoopla and a big push for people to go there, but they haven't. But those who are there are pretty much leftists. So the courts decided last week, as the Parliament did about a month ago, to pull off X, all the while saying they want to engage with more New Zealanders, and headed over to BlueSky. And I told you I thought it was completely the wrong decision. And someone I have a lot of time for, Jonathan Ayling, he's the former head of the Free Speech Union, has just written an opinion piece, unfortunately behind our paywall. But he's written an opinion piece into the New Zealand Herald. And the headline is all you need to know. The move by the courts and Parliament to BlueSky makes these organisations look partisan, makes them look political. And they are. It's a deliberately political decision. The neutral decision for an organisation like the courts, like the Parliament, any actually of our taxpayer-funded groups, is to be on more platforms or none. It is sort of almost a black and white type dynamic. The fact that they're leaving X, where most New Zealanders actually engage and get their news, I mean, the difference in numbers is striking. So for the courts, guys, about 8,000 New Zealanders followed the court's X channel. 43 followed on BlueSky. 43. I mean, that tells the story. So it's very much a partisan move. And even if it's not in their minds, in the court's minds, it looks partisan. And perception is reality. So the wrong call by the courts, totally. They're being very political. In fact, they've been far too political in a whole number of areas as well. So I think that's a big problem for them, and good that they're continuing to be called out. They don't like the free speech. This is the courts, the Parliament, the left in general do not like X because it's a free speech platform. And yes, there's some terrible stuff on X. Yep, you can do some terrible stuff with Grok, which is the AI engine behind X. But it's not unique. I mean, I've been stunned well, not stunned. I sort of know people can get a bit silly, but a lot of the comments on my social media when I've stepped down and challenged what the courts have done are like, oh, well, there's terrible stuff on X. Yeah, there is. But there's terrible stuff across all the platforms. And you know what? There's terrible stuff on mainstream media. Pick up the Herald or Stuff or the Post. There's terrible stuff there as well, as they promote the child abuse of the trans agenda, for example. They promote euthanasia, drug use, and so forth. So there's terrible stuff everywhere. So I personally think the arguments against X are pretty much irrelevant. So yeah, absolutely nuts. I see Gail, I'm getting wonderfully distracted by people in their comments. Good morning to you. Lovely to have you along. Up there in Northland. Oh, that's where my family's from, though, not Doubtless Bay. We're just in the Whangarei, but I suspect it is bucketing most heavily there. As I say, good that Jonathan and others are calling that out. And then this caught my eye as well. Bob and I might talk about it, but this came actually by the Taxpayer Union yesterday, and I haven't seen yet any media coverage. To be fair, I haven't gone through all the papers fully this morning. But you know that we have a ministry for ethnic communities. The Select Committee in Parliament's actually just released a report going, actually, we don't know what the ethnic communities portfolio does, or in many ways why the ministry even exists. But the Taxpayer Union has flushed out that this government agency, taxpayer funded, gave $30,000 to an organisation called the Astrolabe Cultural Centre to lobby for Gaza. That is so totally inappropriate that heads should roll. People need to be sacked, because it is not for government ministries to be funding blatantly political organisations such as this one and promoting blatantly political causes. And I would add, particularly when it comes to the Israel-Gaza situation, it has become a pro-terrorist promotion in many ways, when people have been on the streets, as these lobbyists were facilitating, chanting for the death of Jews, for the destruction of Israel, and supporting Islamic terrorists such as Hamas. Absolutely appalling. And I might just say it would be equally wrong if the ministry was funding pro-Israeli lobbying. It cuts both ways. So I'm not in the first instance siding. I mean, you all know I'm a strong supporter of Israel. I have no time for Islamic terrorism. It is spreading around the world. I have no time for it. I think it's incompatible with our Judeo-Christian values. But it is wrong, period, for any government ministry to be promoting, sponsoring, paying for political lobbying, let alone political lobbying to support the terrorist actions wrought by Hamas. It's just wrong on so many levels. Dennis is asking where we can get some of that money. Well, this is actually, I might say, the irony, guys. Money sloshes around from governments from the left or right to all sorts of groups, but often not the ones who need it. And if I might just take it a step further, we all pay taxes. Those of us running our own small businesses are looking at our taxes as April 7, just around the corner, eye-watering. I don't know about you guys, when you're doing PAYE, which I've done for years, so when you get the tax taken out of your weekly, fortnightly or monthly salary, you notice it, but you don't completely not notice it. But when you're doing a business, which has been my learning curve, you pay it in lump sums, and boy, it hurts. And as Dennis says, and I would echo this, it's not about paying tax, it's about how they spend it. And I'm exactly the same. In fact, I might even put it this way. Live on Facebook and X and elsewhere, I'd even pay more tax. Don't tell the IRD, but I'd even pay more tax if it was actually doing and going to the right places. But when the likes of this ministry, irrelevant as it is, it'd be one of the government ministries I would get rid of for a whole variety of reasons. But funding blatant political promotion, it is just totally wrong. And then on top of this, we've had recently, and this is, I think, a growing problem that we have here in society, because we're importing the problems from overseas. We had this Iranian restaurant owner. Now, it's wrong that he's getting death threats, because what he did is he put down, I think, an American and Israeli flag on the floor of his restaurant, which was forcing people to walk on it. Which, look, I'm a free speech advocate. If that's what he wants to do, he can. I think it's remarkably disrespectful. But what's also striking is that he's been hanging up the Islamic regime's Iranian flag and a picture of the Ayatollah. I've got no time for that. I don't think it needs to be a free speech argument. I'm afraid you do not side with Islamic terrorists. People who, within days in Iran, killed 40,000 civilians. Okay, you need to let that sink in if it hasn't already. The Islamic regime holding Iran captive for something like 47 years, in a matter of days, killed almost 40,000 civilians. It is absolutely appalling. And he's a refugee. He's seeking refugee status here. So it's my view, with the limited information, to be fair, that I have, send him back to Iran. If he wants to put up pictures of the Ayatollah and the Islamic regime, we don't want him here. Okay? In the same way, I don't want New Zealand to be using taxpayer money to fund people to promote Hamas. And the same goes for this Islamic group. This is funded, it's a charity in New Zealand. I've forgotten the exact name of them, but it's almost irrelevant. This is an Islamic charity in New Zealand that tried to hold, in fact it did hold an event in a library to honour the Ayatollah in Iran who was killed. I'll be blunt, I don't want that here. I don't want these people here. It is not appropriate. And it is not a free speech argument, by the way, guys. People are free to speak. But when you are celebrating terrorists, when you are celebrating extremism, we don't need that. We don't want that. As I said earlier, it is importing these problems into our country. And we just need to look around the world for how it's turning out when we do allow these ideologies to take hold. In fact, I just did a podcast yesterday. In fact, I was being interviewed with a guy called Peter Boghossian. If you don't know Peter, look his name up, Peter Boghossian. He's a strong free speech advocate, a strong believer in rationality, debate and argument. He does something called street epistemology. So he was interviewing me yesterday for his YouTube channel, which is quite amazing. He's got 250,000 followers. We were talking around this, where are the limits of free speech, and to what extent do you allow people in who hold such alternative views to what we share. And I think, unfortunately, as a New Zealand example, this is one of them. If we have people in our community celebrating terrorists openly and saying we want to embrace, in effect, this culture, this violence, we have a major problem on our hands. And also, as I say, this is a charity. This, in effect, gets, it's not a government subsidy, but it gets government assistance by not having to pay as much tax. I mean, it is just totally wrong. Anyway, good morning to Greg. Lovely to have you along. Always nice to see you here. And it's just wrong. And again, I just want to insist to people, it is not a free speech argument. Or rather, you can try to concoct a free speech argument, but as I was debating with Peter Boghossian yesterday, we need to stand up for the values which underpin freedoms like freedom of speech. And if you step away from those values, if we were to follow people who want to celebrate the Ayatollahs and the Islamic regime, we won't have free speech anymore, because that will undermine the values of our society, because they don't share that. And I don't even have to prove it. Just look at how Iran is run. It's just absolutely awful. Anyway, I better leave it there. As typical, time is flying by, and even though it's raining, Rach and I have a very big and busy day. So a reminder that, as I say, we have, where is it? We've got political playback tonight. There is no shortage of political issues. Bob and I will be talking recent polls, quite significant ones. We're going to be talking about the fuel crisis. We'll be talking, I don't know if you've picked up too, the McCain's factory in Hawke's Bay is closing. And a week before that, we heard that the Watties factories are closed. I mean, so what is happening to New Zealand's industrial base, or what's left of it? If you haven't checked out the latest and newest show that we have in Family First called Counterculture, you can see we have an array of much younger voices. So you don't have to listen to me and Bob. You can have younger people. Bob and I are still busy writing on the likes of Substack. So this is my most recent one, addressing the COVID report. This is not Bob's recent one, but look him up on Mick blog, or just his name. You'll find him there. Recently too did an RCR interview with Tanya Unkovich. She is amazing. And as I started, a reminder to check out this Family Matters. Erica Komisar, amazing. Not only who she is, how she speaks and what she has to say, but for me, little old podcaster here in New Zealand, to get her was a bit of a coup, which was amazing. Anyway, guys, I'm going to leave you into this very wet New Zealand day. For those of you in Australia and elsewhere, hopefully it is much, much nicer. But great to have you on, guys. I will see you, actually, some of you tonight. Otherwise, I will see you all next Tuesday.